What if I told you that Mutant commissioned me to design an alternative movie poster for Wayne's World? Well, they haven't, unfortunately, but I'm gonna pretend as if they did. If you're new here, hey, I'm Trev. I'm an artist and animator from Ireland, and I make fairly niche, lowbrow style artwork. I'm taking my hand-drawn style and testing whether it can solve real-world commercial briefs. You know, the kind that professional fancy illustrators get hired for. I'm going to make work for companies that haven't even hired me yet, and use all my pop culture knowledge and my art style to see if an outsider artist like myself can break in to commercial illustration. First up, Mutant movie posters. The completely unofficial gig I've given myself is to create an alternative movie poster for Wayne's World, as though Mutant had commissioned me to produce one of their limited edition artist prints. The challenge is to create an alternative movie poster that feels unmistakably like Wayne's World, but is also commercially convincing enough that I could realistically put it in front of a company like Mutant or Mondo or any of the other alternative movie poster providers that are out there. Before we get started, I need to make sure I fully understand Mutant as a company and what an alternative movie poster is supposed to do. All right. So let's talk about Mutant. But to really understand Mutant, we need to start with Mondo. Mondo began as a DIY t-shirt shop operating out of the original Alamo Drafthouse Cinema in Austin, before evolving into probably one of the most influential names in alternative movie poster art. They worked with artists to reinterpret movie posters, and in doing so, they turned something traditionally used for advertising into genuine collectible artwork. And we're talking about incredible artists like Tyler Stout, Ollie Moss, Laurent Dorio, I definitely said that wrong, and of course the legendary Drew Struzan. In 2022, Mondo was bought out by Funko, and a significant number of the senior creative staff, including some of the people responsible for its poster legacy, were laid off. Not cool, Funko. Funk you, Funko. But in 2024, former creative directors from Mondo regrouped and launched a new company, Mutant. Mutant describes itself as an art-forward company, and they work with a whole host of global illustrators, designers, composers, and general art makers to create everything from screen prints to vinyl soundtracks, toys, and other cool physical media. They've already worked with a whole bunch of awesome artists like Aaron Horkey, Daniel Danger, Francesco Francaviglia, and now, for the purposes of this completely unofficial illustration, they'll be working with me, Trev. They just don't know it yet. Today, there is a much wider alternative movie poster industry, including Bottleneck Gallery, Vice Press, and a whole lot more. But Mutant still feels like the most relevant dance partner for this forced collaboration, because their entire identity is built around collaborating with distinctive artists and styles. Based on all of that information, here is the brief that I am setting for myself. Create a collectible alternative poster for the movie Wayne's World that A, clearly communicates the movie without recreating the original poster or advertising. B, is built around a strong visual concept. C, feels like a credible limited edition collectible poster. And most importantly, D, it must still look unmistakably like my style. Before I start illustrating anything, I need to figure out visually and tonally what makes Wayne's World feel like Wayne's World. I think it's time to rewatch the movie. I'll be back in 5 minutes.
5 minutes later.
I definitely forgot how silly the movie was. It's got this screwball comedy energy to it, which I guess makes sense because it is based on a Saturday Night Live sketch. Most of what I remembered was still there. Oh, me and Garth, we have the same frames. I don't know if that's a good thing. Meatloaf cameos as a security guard, We're Not Worthy, backstage passes, Alice Cooper, Crucial Taunt, The Shitty Beatles, Noah's Arcade, Wayne's ex-girlfriend with the gun rack. The movie does have a surprising amount of recognizable places, objects, sets, more than enough material to start sketching out some concepts. The first concept is built around the backstage pass. So you can see from this sketch that the backstage pass, it would take up the entire composition of the poster. We would have the fingers creeping in here, but all the relevant information, the title, all of that stuff, that would all live on the actual pass itself. It's a simple idea. It connects directly to the movie. The more I look at it, it does feel quite limited. There's only so much visual information you can put on a backstage pass. I've made it a Wayne's World pass. I can add some stickers, some dirt, some grime, give it a little bit of personality, but ultimately with a concept like this, it's the typography that is doing all the heavy lifting. I actually think this could work really well as packaging. You know when they re-release a movie on DVD or Blu-ray and they put it inside a special edition slipcover with new artwork? I think that this could make a really cool slipcover. As a main poster, yeah, it doesn't hit the mark. For the second concept, I took the title Wayne's World literally. What if the poster was an actual map of Wayne's World? I was thinking a stylized map of Aurora with all the important locations from the movie. All of these locations, they're scattered around the city, but they're connected through the events of the movie. It's like the intro to Game of Thrones, where the map of the world becomes part of the storytelling itself. But it also has the same problems as the backstage pass. It becomes too reliant on typography and information. A viewer would have to get up close and read all the labels and all the information before figuring out, Wayne's World. And for this poster, I want the movie and the idea to work from across the room. My third concept comes from a scene in the movie when Wayne and Garth are lying on the hood of their car. I've got Wayne and Garth concentrated along the bottom of the image, with most of the poster opening into this huge area of negative sky above them. It's very simple, it's very restrained, and it could look really cinematic. The idea here was their friendship. Because underneath all the comedy, Wayne's World is about these two characters and their genuine friendship. But it also carries the most execution risk. The entire concept and poster depends on Wayne and Garth being immediately recognizable, which means actor likeness becomes a very real issue. And stylistically, this one relies on a lot of restraint. And that's not my strong suit. My character work tends to lean more exaggerated. It's cartoon driven. And if I was to push Wayne and Garth too far in that direction, this image could start to feel more like a comic book panel as opposed to a collectible movie poster. Someone like Ollie Moss could really make this work. Someone who can control negative space and simplicity and do it justice. This final concept, it's closest to my natural way of working. I like to create these dense filled still life illustrations that I lovingly call trash lives. I take a group of objects, I pile them all together in a single image, and I fill out the composition with smaller details and visual jokes. The idea is the main image works immediately, but the more time you spend with it, the more you discover. Wayne's cap is the perfect centerpiece for that type of composition. His baseball cap is iconic. You can recognize it from across the room. So this poster would center on that and build out the rest of the movie's world through objects. Garth's glasses, his drumsticks, cassette tapes, the backstage pass, the keys to the Mertmobile, the gun rack from his ex-girlfriend, even Garth's weird little donut man. This directly plays into my sensibilities as an illustrator. I like dense compositions. I like hiding Easter eggs. I like images that reveal themselves gradually. It also feels tonally right for Wayne's World. It's loud, it's chaotic, it's nostalgic, and it's kind of juvenile. It communicates Wayne's World immediately. I think it fits the tone of the movie. It also allows me to meet this brief through a visual language and style that feels distinctly like my work. I'm going to start with Wayne's baseball cap because it's the centerpiece, right? And every other object in the composition will live around it. So once I have a clean rendering of the baseball cap that I'm happy with, I can start to rough in some of the surrounding objects. For a long time, creating these still lives, I'd get like really bogged down in perfectionism around the perspective of every object. I'd get into this cycle of just resketching the same stuff over and over and over again, just trying to make it 10% better and more realistic to what it should look like. But these days, I've given myself permission to not be such a perfectionist and prioritize the illustration instead. For example, if an object needs to sit at a slightly impossible angle, but it makes the composition better, well, I'm okay with that now. But before, that used to drive me crazy. I'm a lowbrow artist. If somebody wanted perfect realism, they wouldn't hire me in the first place. They'd hire a completely different kind of illustrator, because that's not what my work is. I think it's important to definitely understand the strengths of your work and why people resonate with it, especially if we're trying to get commercial illustration gigs, you know? With this poster and composition, I'm not asking whether everything is technically correct. I don't care. What I'm really trying to create is a sense of balance between the different objects. That's why I'm doing a lot of stacking and layering, because it makes for a more interesting composition, but it also helps sell the illusion. At this stage, I like to shuffle a lot of the composition around. One of the earlier versions here, it was basically just the baseball cap, the Walkman, Gart's glasses, and the backstage pass. It's clear, it's easy, and it gives every object plenty of space. It's probably closer to what people would imagine when they hear commercially restrained. I just can't help myself. As I continue to develop it, I just keep adding more and more objects, more grit, and more of the world of the movie. I mean, I think it's given the piece more of a narrative, more of an environment to search through, more of a personality. But how much personality can I add before it becomes a mess? The goal here is controlled chaos. That's the word of the day, controlled chaos. Write that down. The smaller references are actually some of my favorite stuff, like Gart's Donut Man. It's a strange, out-of-place donut in a Wayne's World poster, but if you remember the movie, you know exactly why it's there. An added bonus is the crumbs from the donut give me something that I can scatter across the rest of the illustration, and it helps me connect all the different objects together. I feel like I'm starting to find a balance between the major objects that communicate this is Wayne's World versus some of the more obscure references and Easter eggs that people can search for. The hierarchy is there, and I think I'm ready to start, committing to some line work, but not right now. First, I want to have a cup of tea and scream into a pillow for 40 minutes. Then I'll get back to this. This is my favorite part of the process, the line work. I do all my line work in Procreate. I mean, I pretty much do almost everything in Procreate when I can. I always use the standard Procreate technical pen. Now, I have made some of my own modifications to it. I've removed the taper from the beginning and the end of the stroke, and I've also taken away the pressure control, so the line is really clean, really consistent from beginning to end. It's not very glamorous, but it is very clean, it's predictable, and it just stays out of the way. My style, it's heavily influenced by traditional cell animation, particularly all the 90s cartoons that I grew up watching and copying into my sketchbook as a kid. So naturally, I gravitate towards that solid, clean, consistent line work as opposed to overly expressive line work. I don't like to rigidly follow my sketch. I like to use it more like a guide. So I allow myself to move away from it if I want to add some little details, change some things around, whatever feels right. I treat my sketch like the base structure, but my final line work, that should have at least 20% more personality, if that makes sense. These cassette tapes here are actually a great example of that. In the sketch, I've just scribbled the names on the tape. I could easily just keep that the way it is, but I think just writing the names on the tape feels a little bit flat, right? We can do something better. I'm going to draw some strips of sellotape that is stuck on to each cassette tape. This makes them feel a little bit more like homemade mixtapes, but it also gives them another layer of texture. It's another little bit of personality. And I do that quite a lot in the line work stage because I'm no longer worried about the composition or the structure. So my mind is freed just to have fun and play. And that's where a lot of the cool details come out of. Majority of the line work is pretty much done here. So when it comes to shading, I kind of approach that in the same way as I do the line work. Simple tonal shading like cell animation. So I'm not using any sort of fades, any gradients, or any sort of dense comic book style cross hatching. Although in certain areas, I do like to put in a solid block of color so I can create a deep cast shadow. It gives a little bit of extra weight and space to the objects. Whereas the tonal shading keeps the overall piece looking like a cell animation, retaining that, cartoon vibe. This approach definitely has become part of the visual language of my style. The visual language of my style, that sounds very fancy, doesn't it? Write that one down. We've got the line work, we've got the shading. I think it's time we put some color into this. My natural default is towards turquoise, teals, purples, violets. I've been using those colors for a very long time. They've followed me right back from when I was painting graffiti and street art. The main color decision is Wayne's baseball cap. It's the holy grail. It's the anchor of the composition. So the basic structure for the color is fairly simple. We've got the dark purple, blue, violet for the main anchor. Then we've got the turquoise and teal tones for a lot of the secondary supporting objects. And those cold tones are broken up with the warmth of the amber and yellow. Now that I feel that the color and shading is in place, this is where I can start to add some final highlights and a little bit of texture. Gotta add reflection to Garth's glasses as well as some edge highlights here and there. I'm also going to add some Bend-Aid dots to certain areas of the piece just to give it an extra little bit of texture. And this is mainly for when it's printed physically and it's a lot bigger. This is the only time that I don't use the technical brush. The illustration, it's about 95% finished. And I think the most useful thing I can do now is just stop looking at it. When you're staring at the same image long enough, you just stop seeing it properly. It's like your brain understands every single decision that was made, so it stops seeing it as a whole piece and just ignores obvious mistakes. So I'm going to give myself that break. I'm going to step away from this poster and come back to it in a few days. But we can go straight there with the magic of editing. So let's do a Wayne's World transition. It's been a few days. I'm back and I've already jumped in and made a bunch of changes. So let's check them out. I removed a bunch of donut crumbs and splashes of jam that were all over the image. They had gotten way too messy. The original idea was that they would help connect the objects, but they just become visual noise, so I scaled it back. I also removed the straw that was running across the foreground here. We have a pileup of objects here in the center, so I wanted more breathing room in the foreground, so that straw had to go. The Walkman and cassette tape was another problem. It felt a little bit too dominant next to the baseball cap. I reduced it by roughly 10%. It's not a dramatic change, but it does give the main focal point more room to breathe. Notice how a lot of these final changes, they're all about subtraction, reduction, and refinement, and that's usually a good sign that the piece is ready to be finished. The last substantial change was to the Alice Cooper backstage pass. The original version was the snake with the skull wrapping around it, which is fine, but because the pass sits at such a visible area of the foreground, the graphic just felt a little bit underdeveloped. It needed a little love and attention, so I replaced it with my little portrait here of Alice Cooper, and I also redesigned the layout of the badge and added some extra details. It doesn't really change much in the overall piece, but I do think it makes the entire lower section feel more resolved, more completed. A few other minor changes here and there, nothing major, but with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the finished poster. I had to get a print. This is a fine art cliché print, because I'm pretty fancy like that. I needed to see it physically, I needed to touch it. So what do we think about this? Well, from a distance, the Wayne's World logo should tell you exactly what movie this is before you notice anything else. Move a little closer and the surrounding objects should reveal more of the movie. and the rest of the movie should reveal itself through the surrounding objects. The smaller references are a lot of fun, and they're there for people who really know the movie, but you don't need to understand every little Easter egg to enjoy this poster. At a smaller scale, most of those objects fall away, and it's really the baseball cap and the overall silhouette that will hold the piece together. Is it perfect? No. I could reopen the file right now, test a different background, change the objects, move them around, or look through earlier versions and convince myself that I abandoned a much stronger composition somewhere around version 12. But that kind of mentality is how we find ourselves never finishing anything, and that's not healthy, kids. The real test is whether or not I would put my name to it, include it in my portfolio, or feel comfortable to show it to Mutant or another alternative movie poster company. And I think I would. It's not flawless, but it does meet the brief that we set out at the beginning, and that's good enough for me. And it does feel like something I would genuinely want to collect. But what do you think? You can tell me if you agree with me or not in the comments. Go nuts. I don't even read them. Oh, and like and subscribe, do all that nonsense, and click one of these videos. There'll be a video here, or maybe on both sides, but you should definitely check them out. Yeah. Now feck off. Oh, wait, one more thing. If you want one of these prints, and why wouldn't you? Cheeky fuck. Go to my website, trevelviz.com, and you could pick up one of them as an edition. I have printed only 10 fine art cliché prints. Now that is what you call a real limited edition. So that's your homework. Talk shit in the comments, like and subscribe, go pick up an edition, and pet more dogs. Now you can feck off.